Hello folks, and welcome to this week's hi-fi review. And I don't believe it. Are they creases on my t-shirt? Have I not ironed? It's been one of those days, guys. It's been one of those days. I cut myself shaving as I stopped bleeding. And it took, I know this might sound hard to believe, it took an hour to find my glasses. I lost my glasses. I couldn't find them for an hour. I must have searched this house for, well, 10 times all over. Couldn't find them. And where were they? See these things behind me? Right at the top, hanging by one of these arms, precariously swinging. That's where the glasses were. I must have looked at some vinyl and reality just disappeared, which it tends to do when I look at vinyl. And forgot where I put my glasses, and then I roamed the house an hour. Anyway, as you can tell, this video is a bit rambling. So if you're anti-rambling, you're entering a rambling zone. So if you're not patient with that sort of video, and I know some of you get terribly upset by this sort of approach to video making on YouTube, then you need to go now, because it's a sort of rambling kind of video. Anyway, we're here to talk about a set of, well, I did call them stands in a moment of weakness. I did place a teaser on the YouTube community tab, and you need to look at this tab. Incidentally, I need to do a separate video because I've started actively adding to the community tab bit on YouTube, so check that out. I'm going to be adding news and teasers about future stuff in there. Anyway, I did a teaser saying, hey, there's going to be a video on speaker stands, but these aren't speaker stands. I made a mistake. They are not speaker stands. They are isolation platforms. They're called Podiums, and they're from the UK. Very respected, veteran, I mean in the nicest possible way. Been around for a long time. Run by a guy called Max Townshend. And I chatted to Max during this review and asked him about some of the background information about these particular isolation bases, these Podiums, and he was very kind to give me some of his experience and some of his knowledge and background context to the creation of these Podiums. What I'll do, I may include it in this video. If not, I'll put it in the description. So let's talk about the Seismic, because that's part of the official name, the Seismic isolation Podiums from Townshend Audio. Now these are high-end products and they cost a pretty penny. There are 5 standard sizes which can cater for speakers weighing up to 200 kilograms for each speaker, and the sizes range from 290mm by 220mm all the way up to 640mm by 480mm. But you can request a custom build if you have a larger or strangely shaped pair of speakers, and they can be created to take any load. Prices for the standard sizes range from $1,400 for a pair up to $3,200 for a pair. But as I say, you can ask for custom builds and you're going to pay more for those. Now the Podiums can cater for any type of speaker. When I say any type of speaker, I mean any type of speaker. So that means floor standers, that includes subwoofers, and it even means speakers on top of stands. So the speaker and the stand would then sit on a podium base. The basic idea of these products is to break the connection that sends and receives vibration to and from your speakers. Now, reducing noise and vibration in and around your hi-fi is a concept I'm very familiar with, and I've spent many years trying to reduce the noise floor in and around my hi-fi. That's what these Seismic Podiums are all about. That's why they exist, to reduce the noise floor, specifically to reduce vibration in and around your speakers. To me, that's important because you've no doubt spent a lot of money on your own hi-fi speakers and you want to get the best performance from them. You want to get the best bang for your buck, as it were. And if the noise floor is relatively high, then that's going to mask a whole heap of detail you've paid good money to hear. Now, if what I've just said sounds like gobbledygook and me just babbling on, which is something I'm prone to do, I must admit, hang on just for a sec and let's just take a little look at the background to this noise palaver, because after all, that's the basis, that's the reason for the existence of this product. So you really need to know where this product is coming from. You need to know a little bit of context. You need to know a little bit of the background. When your hi-fi produces music, it's not only music that spills from your speakers. There's other stuff in and around it. Other stuff that attaches itself to that music. It's part of the music, but it's not really all that welcome at all. It's parasitic to the music and is actually quite harmful in some ways. Well, harmful to your enjoyment. The stuff I'm talking about goes by fancy acronyms like EMI and RFI and the like. Vibration comes under the same banner. This sonic detritus, this rubbish, is uninvited and unwelcome, sent to do nothing but irritate us, like floating leaves in your cup of tea. And where does it come from? Well, it comes from within your hi-fi, your mains supply, your room, in and outside of your house, your mobile phone, your Wi-Fi. The list goes on. These distortive elements surround us all of the time. They're a standard part of our day-to-day life, and they cause us no particular harm or bother. They only directly affect us when we do things like listening to music on our hi-fi. Now, these things are not good for music. They tend to muffle it. They tend to veil. And I don't mean like putting your hand over a speaker cone. I don't mean that kind of veiling. This is a little bit more subtle, I suppose. I'm talking about veiling fine detail, especially the delicate reverb tail from a cymbal hit that might not run as far as it should, or the plucking of an acoustic string that may not sound as solidly steel-like when plucked. And on their own, these tiny little things may not matter, but you add up the hundreds, well, thousands of these tiny things, and you lose something from the sound, a sense of accuracy, a sense of soul. You end up with a very lively, recognizable noise, that's for sure, but you also lose an essence of realism. Now, to many, this stuff doesn't matter. Many music fans don't really care. They can even get a bit impatient with you when you bring up the subject over a pint of beer, for example. It's a lot of fuss over nothing. Just sit down and listen to the music, man, they say. But there are some of us, poor misguided fools that we may be, who are rather more fixated about this sort of thing. The problem is we want to hear more. We want to hear more detail. We want to hear more information. We want to hear more everything. I'm certainly like that. I constantly search for ways to improve the quality of my hi-fi in sound terms. I tweak here, and you may be surprised to learn I tweak there. And I know it might baffle some of you, but I want to get as close to the music as I possibly can. I want to get as close to the musicians who were playing that music at that time as I possibly can. So I spend a lot of my time trying to improve sonic realism by getting rid of the stuff that gets in the way. Things like high frequency noise and vibration and the like, because when that happens, the music sounds more real, and it's a good thing. Well, for me, at any rate. Now, because of all these forces hanging around our lives, there's no one silver bullet to get rid of them all in one go. So that means you have to target, rather laser-like, the individual components of your hi-fi and treat them as individual cases. And the speakers are no different, and that's what Townshend Audio's Podiums are all about. They target the speaker to reduce the noise floor in and around those speakers. So that, in my cack-handed sort of way, is the background and the context for these podiums. That's why, as I say, that's why they exist in the first place. That's why Max Townshend spent so long creating the darn things. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, I did talk to Max and I asked him about the design and whys and the wherefores, and he was very kind to take some time out of his busy day to talk to me about that. And what I'll do, down below in the description, I'll add some quotes from Max just to add to the story. So you're welcome to check those out at your leisure. But for now, as always, I think we need, at this time, to take a closer look. And welcome to the closer look section for the Seismic isolation podiums from Townshend Audio. To reduce the podiums to their most basic forms, they are spring-loaded, adjustable platforms that cut out vibration to and from your speakers. And because every technology company loves a brand name, Townshend says that these products include captive load cell technology to provide a stable 4 square footprint. The platforms offer fine leveling adjustment via a rotatable top cap, while on the bottom is an adjustable foot to compensate for out of true flaws. The platform itself is made from black steel and can handle speakers with or without spikes. These Seismic podiums themselves are suitable for wood, tile or carpeted floors. When in use, the total speaker height, that is, your speaker on top of one of these podiums, is increased by 20 millimeters. And I didn't find that to be an issue during the review. Yes, the tweeter was lifted a tad, but to be honest, at least in my case, I actually found that the tweeters now held a more accurate position in terms of height, as far as the listening chair I was sitting in. Now, Townshend Audio does offer a techie explanation for how and why these podiums work, and they do provide a very nice YouTube video which explains everything. The video is full of seismic tests with visible real-time test results, and I highly recommend you check it out. It's ideal if you're into stats and test results and all of that malarkey. What I will do is place a link in the description and you can knock yourself out. Now, when the stands arrived for review, they were a touch out of alignment and needed tweaking, which was fine because I needed to review this bit anyway. During setup, I was asked by the simple one-sheet instructions to place the podiums in their final resting place, and may they rest in peace. And at this point, I made sure that they were level. Do this before the speaker gets anywhere near the podium. It's easier and less cumbersome, and you'll have more room to work. I do have one minor criticism here, and it is only minor. I would have liked to have seen a built-in bubble level on these stands, or if not, a free bubble level accessory supplied with the actual podiums, but nothing was included. So make sure you grab one, as I did, before you set up the podiums. To level up the structure, you need to rotate the metal discs that you find placed at the very bottom of the podium. If you do find these bottom discs a bit stiff, or if they're rather locked into place, you can use a spanner which you can use to loosen these bottom plates. Once the base is level, carefully place your speaker onto the podium itself and try to center the cabinet. You can do this by looking down and just checking around the periphery, just making sure, as I say, that cabinet is centered. Initially, you may be struck by a case of the wonkies, as the speaker may want to tilt to one side. That is, one of the 4 podium feet might give a little too much and a bit too easy, causing unbalance in the shelf. Keep your bubble level handy for that bit as well. Now, to correct this and to balance the whole structure, there's a wheel on top of each podium. Rotating this wheel anti-clockwise raises the podium to level things off, and vice versa if you twist clockwise. The instructions will provide information on how these adjustments can be performed efficiently. Again, the instructions do a good job in giving you fine-tune directions. Once the podiums are level, you should be able to give these speakers a little push and they will bounce back in perfect balance and equilibrium. It's actually a very nice and rather satisfying thing to see and to do. And I actually spent far too long in this review giving these speakers a push and watching them bounce back. But hey, how do these things actually perform? Do they actually increase the quality of the sound? Now, let's not forget, these particular podiums are not exactly cheap. So you're going to want to see some performance increase, and a pretty major one at that. Do the podiums deliver? Well, let's go to the sound quality tests and we will find out. And welcome to the sound quality tests for the Townshend Audio Seismic Isolation Podiums. And to do these sound tests, I grabbed me a pair of speakers. I actually used a pair of floor standers from Monitor Audio. These are the Silver 300s. Yes, the price of the speakers is probably less than the podiums themselves, but there was a reason I did this. I thought to myself that it was all too easy to grab a £10,000 worth of speakers, and well, if they sound great, it's expected, don't you think? If the podiums can work on a low, well, relatively low, especially in relative to the price of the podiums, a relatively low price pair of speakers, then they're going to work with just about everything. So I consider the Silver 300s a bit of a tough test for the podiums. They're going to have to really work to get extra sound quality from these designs, I reckon. And in terms of music, well, I started with vinyl and a slice of Jethro Tull. I selected Living in the Past, a classic album. Now, to do the test, I began with the speakers on the floor. So literally what I'm talking about is the speaker cabinet, the floor, and nothing in between. Well, I lie, a woolen rug that was in between. Then I moved from that bare bones setup to one where I grabbed myself some relatively cheap, not dirt cheap, but relatively cheap spike shoes. These are from Blue Horizon, and a set of 4 of these things will cost you about £80. The Blue Horizon has a metallic top with a little dimple in case you have spikes on your cabinets, and underneath and within there's a mixture of cork and rubber, and it's a very nice little product for the price. So a set of those for 2 speakers will cost £160. Then I went from there all the way up to the stars and tried the podiums. I wanted to see what the differences were. Of course, I wanted to see if the extra money was actually worth it. And I wanted to hear in sonic terms where the extra cash goes to. So does the sound of the speakers lying flat on the carpet sound bad? Well, no, of course not. This is a quality hi-fi chain with a pair of excellent speakers. The sound is very nice indeed. I'm sure you'd feel the same if you could hear it yourself. And that's what generally happens in and around your typical hi-fi. Most people will hear something like I'm hearing and they'll think to themselves, sounds fine to me, what's wrong with that then? Thing is though, fine is as good as they're going to get. Fine might be good enough for some users. Fine is not good enough for me. The sound could be better than fine, and I for one want to go beyond that. I want to find out better than fine. So I searched for better than fine, and I put the Blue Horizon spike shoes underneath these speakers and I listened to the comparative tests. And there was a difference. I heard a greater focus from all instruments and musicians across the soundstage. That was especially evident around the lead vocal, which now kind of separated itself from the other instruments and isolated itself in the stereo image area, right dead center. Actually, that effect meant that the stereo image was stronger now. Imagery was improved with added space in the soundstage. So, a win all round. But what could the podiums do to that? How could the podiums improve, if at all? And if they could improve, would the improvement be big enough? Would it be better than fine? So, in my opinion, are these podiums worth the asking price? Oh yes, in my opinion, oh yes. From what I was hearing, they transform the entire sound. Earlier, the musicians and instruments were sprinkled somewhat randomly across the soundstage, and hearing them, you couldn't really fix them. So the acoustic guitar was on the left there somewhere, and the piano was kind of on the right-ish, and the other instruments were there or thereabouts. It was all a bit nebulous. With the podiums in place, not only were the musicians fixed in a new position, but the band itself occupied an entire 3D space for the first time. So how did that differ from earlier on? With the Blue Horizon spike shoes, the spike shoes did provide a 3D effect, but that was in the stereo image, right in the center. The vocal went back, so that was nice, that was very good. The other instruments left and right, that was still canvas flat. That was still pretty 2D as it were. Now everyone had a sense of position and space. Secondly, there was a reduction in noise. The noise floor fell through the floor, so much so that cymbal hits, which could earlier be heard but were never really that impressive, now had a notable focus and tonal accuracy. The amount of space around cymbal hits was truly impressive, giving the cymbal response a new level of importance in the mix. Drum hits were no longer simple strikes. They showed the drum's size and the amount of power behind that initial strike. That is, the tonal realism from the percussion was much higher now. The clarity from this track overall also rose. For example, at the start of the track was a glockenspiel or a instrument that sounded very much like that. And this glockenspiel type instrument, earlier on with the Blue Horizons in place, sounded like a very nice set of tones, but just a tone, if you see what I mean. Just 3 tones, I think it was, three tones. With the Podiums in place, the tones no longer sounded like tones. They sounded as if something was being hit. So you had that start, the strike, then you had the sound after the strike, and then you had the reverb tail echo bit. You had 3 of those. So these tones now had definition. They had far more focus than before. The piano was another beneficiary. It also offered a greater resonance. You got the feeling that the ivories were attached to a massive wooden box, and there were definite after effects to hitting each key. Finally, although the spike shoes largely removed a shouty brightness from the lead vocal, that effect never really left and could still be sensed during crescendos. With the Podiums in place, that edgy nature was wholly removed, leaving more character and texture from the lead vocal and hence more emotion. I then changed to CD and Ryuichi Sakamoto, his solo work from 1989 called Beauty on the Virgin America label. I played the folk-like track Asadoya, which features a host of secondary percussion, a bank of strings, a vocal chorus. There's things like tabla and Spanish guitar and all kinds of other stuff. It's a busy presentation. Without a sense of transparency, the entire thing can sound confused, but not here. What I appreciated about this track via the Podiums was the multi-layered presentation. Each layer was easily accessed via the ear as well. I was never left with a foggy, confused lump of sound, so the lead vocal, backing chorus, 3 secondary percussion instruments, tabla, piano, bass and more were each placed in a neat position. So each instrument, despite there being a lot of them, could be heard very easily indeed. And despite the busy nature of the soundstage, it never felt bloated. And it can sound just like that if any part of the hi-fi loses control, but control was absolute with the Podiums. So how do I conclude the review of the Seismic Isolation Podiums from Townshend Audio? Well, if I could distill this entire review down into one word, that word would be organisation. The Podiums not only bring order to the soundstage, they apply a sense of understanding in terms of the instruments you hear. That is, each instrument now makes more sense. So if you heard a piece of music, say, and it always sounded previously a little bit muddy, now you get this sort of like, oh, I see what they were trying to do here now. There's a sense of realization, possibly from a confused mess. The Podiums bring an overall sense of clarity to any one track. More than that, because you feel you're in good hands, you find yourself relaxing and enjoying your music. There's an expectation of excitement of what's coming next, instead of a fear that this or that frequency might be bright, sharp, or one step away from sounding punch drunk. More than any of this though, the Podiums allow your speakers to perform to the best of their ability. Grab a pair of these Podiums, stick them underneath your speakers and hear, for better or for worse, just what your speakers are capable of. It's my guess that you'll be hearing them, and I mean truly hearing them, for the very first time. I would say the Podiums are the most generous items in your hi-fi chain. They spend their time making your speakers sound great. And that's me done. Thank you very much for staying to the end of this review, this video. I do appreciate your time and also your support. And if you can add a little bit of extra support, I would truly appreciate that as well. So if you can click on the like below, and also if you haven't done so already, the subscribe button, I will be truly happy. Now down below, as I said, there's a host of information down there. There's the quotes from designer, owner of Townshend Audio, Max Townshend himself. Check the description for those. Also, there are links to all my social media bases. There's a link to my Facebook group, and you're welcome to join that. Also, check out my website, and there's a host of information on there that you won't see on this channel. Similarly, there's exclusive editorial on my Patreon page, so check that out too. And I will be back next week with, or at least one video, maybe two. Who can tell? It's a mystery at the moment. But until that time, whenever we do meet up again, and I hope it'll be pretty darn soon, bye bye for now.